Crystal Chamber is the current solo raid boss, and aside from having one of the coolest intro cutscenes, it's also got a nasty set of tricks to keep you occupied. Regardless if you're just in it for the cube batteries, or trying to compete for the leaderboards, today I'm going to show you how to form a team and battle this behemoth of a boss, including a full example run of my own solo raid setup for reference. My name is Nikke, let's get started. So I believe this is the first time we've seen a boss debut that didn't start out in an event or campaign. Let's start with some basics. Crystal Chamber, or sometimes I'll call it CC, is weak to electric code and has effective range for shotgun users. If you're doing challenge modes, it's advised to use electric code DPSs if you can. In fact, it's actually a soft requirement to bring any electric code unit, as one of its attacks requires one to clear the cancel rings. If you don't bring one, especially in challenge mode, your run is pretty much over. Each run will start with the boss targeting your highest attack unit, as it has in a couple previous raids. The damage isn't that high, so you can probably just out-heal this. Crystal Chamber will spawn 2 side crystal parts that are destroyable. When the level begins, I would recommend leaving them at a low amount of health if you can, because they can launch an explosive attack that damages your whole team. If you happen to destroy one completely, then it might just summon one with full health and it just makes it a lot harder to deal with. If you have a DPS with Pierce, you can try aiming at the root/bottom portion of the crystal to hit both the crystal and the body at once, though I do found this to be a bit inconsistent. The most unique mechanic is the special move in which you must choose one over the other. Shooting the left circle will cause the boss to apply a team-wide attack down debuff. This is permanent, and you must use a debuff cleanser like X Mika with the upcoming aid to get rid of it. Shoot the right circle, and the boss will launch a slow-moving orb that must be hit 500 times before it pops, or else it deals team-wide damage. The solution is to run a shotgun or minigun comp to shoot it down before it reaches you. Or so you think. As it turns out, how this orb deals damage is that it will aim for a random ally, and when that ally takes damage, everyone else does too. You can actually just iframe this if you switch position to the opposite of the one when the orb was launched. For example, if the orb was launched while everyone was out of cover shooting, then order everyone to take cover when it hits will prevent all damage altogether. Sometimes it's a bit hard to tell who the orb is targeting, but if you can know that the targeted unit in question was either in cover or shooting, you can just dodge this. Now this does sound easy on paper, but if you don't have a taunt unit, this method can be a bit inconsistent. The boss can also enter an invulnerable state with 3 cancel rings. Again, these must be shot with an electric code unit. It doesn't have to be your DPS, even someone like Naga who is part of a support core will be able to handle this, even if she is the only electric code in the team. Next, CC will launch a barrage of projectiles, and while you can shoot them out of the air, they come out really fast, meaning some of them will hit one of your allies. You can also iframe them, but it's quite likely that not all of your units will be in cover when they launch, so some will still go through. They don't do a lot of damage, but it is something that probably can't be completely avoided. Finally, there is the screen of cancel rings. Only thing to note here is that your units don't automatically try to hit them, so you have to use your on-field member to try and clear this. Ideally, this attack comes out during a full burst, so you'll have a much easier time with it. The boss completely disappears during the sequence, so you can't just intentionally delay hitting the circles to get some damage in. You can try using a shotgun user, and again, when it comes to cancel rings, damage doesn't really matter, but how many instances of damage you deal to it. After about 1 minute and 30, the boss will enter its second phase. I do believe that the boss will transform into the second phase no matter what you do, as long as you get to this point of the fight. The fight pretty much stays more or less the same after that, even though he looks a bit more intimidating. It will still fire 2 rounds of single target lasers targeting your highest attack unit, and will launch 2 rounds of projectiles instead of just once. It's a bit harder to deal with in general, but if you've been dealing with phase 1 just fine, you'll have no problems here as well. Now then, let's take a look at my own solo raid run. I'll be doing this in challenge mode, and once I'm showing the footage, I do want to state that challenge mode is a lot more threatening than just the normal ones, as the attacks of CC does a lot more damage than usual. So first, I'm starting with a made Pravati setup, running Tove as well as Summer Helm for CDR. It's not exactly the best setup here, and before I show the rest of the run, I do want to also state that I have reset quite a number of times because I just had to get the perfect runs in order to maximize that damage. So this is, in my opinion, one of the showcase teams that supposedly features the current raid up character. And as you can see, when it does the 3 cancel rings, you just switch to Maid Parvati, who is Electrocode, and just clear them. It doesn't have to be Parvati, it could be anyone with Electrocode, of course. And then when the cancel rings come out, something I find is that usually, when they do come out, you will be likely in the middle of a full burst, given that you run a CDR unit and your rotation runs naturally. And my thought process when running this team was that since I'm running Tove anyways, I might as well try to run another shotgun DPS. And while Sugar is not exactly the best in this department, for whatever reason, the game did give me like 6 spare copies of Sugar, so at the very least she has some decent stats for this fight. I actually burst between Maid Parvati as well as Helm, as I find that the healing is just a lot more appreciated in this case. So overall, I did get hit once by the meteor, and I think once again here. A lot of the times I do reset my runs. In this case, I just decided to run with it because why not, right? And during these sequences, you'll see that I actually try to aim for the 2 crystals, but I don't completely finish them off. Because just in case if the boss does the exploding crystal move, then it is quite easy to deal with. Of course, some of these runs, you'll see them end prematurely as some of my units just happen to wipe. But to be fair, even with some of these scuffed results, I was still overall quite satisfied with my runs. So for this first team, you can see it wiped out with a bit more remaining on the clock, but I was able to deal a total of 400 million damage, which is, admittedly slightly on the lower end, but it is still quite a good performing team, especially if we consider that it ran some pretty unconventional teammates like Tove and Sugar. Next up is the Bunny's turn. And this is probably one of the most unexpected high-performance teams I've had. Originally, I didn't have original Scarlet here, and I ran Alice instead. Now, this was an issue because none of the bunnies were Electrocode, and both Scarlet Ultra as well as Alice are not Electrocode either, which means that when I got to the invulnerability attack with the 3 cancel rings, I just wiped because you just can't clear it. But with this team, sometimes it's a bit hard to see where the crystal was falling, but I did manage to iframe that one time. And just to note, it is very important that you do actually hit one of the 2 selections for the attacks, otherwise the boss will launch both of them. So for those 2 orb attacks, I got pretty lucky there. Because while you can kind of be sure that one of your units may or may not be in cover, you can't be sure that all of them are in cover, like, constantly. And then for these big cancel ring attacks, you just want to wipe them out as soon as you can. You can't target the boss anyways while it's ticking down, so you might as well get rid of it ASAP. So as you can see, the bunnies here are as strong as ever, and as we're entering into stage 2, you can see that the sheer amount of healing, as well as leader's attack buffs here, just manages to keep the team afloat for so long. You can see that I do destroy some of the crystals. I would definitely try to keep them at a low health if you can. I think in this run, I was just a little bit impatient and just decided to go for it anyways. So when the 3 cancel rings come out, of course you use Scarlet here because she is Electrocode. Again, very important that you do put an Electrocode in your team at all times. This is actually quite an interesting challenge, at least in my opinion, is that for these soft element requirements, you do have to kind of think about your team building strategies, that not all of them can just be brute force with your typical Red Hood comps. So this team was able to survive all the way to the end, so very, very impressive performance. Again, you can never go wrong with the bunnies, and this team did a whopping 900 million damage. That is really good. I think the highest I've ever dealt in a solo raid attempt was during Ultra's solo raid, and that was back when Red Hood was released. And speaking of Red Hood, guess who's coming up next? So this is somewhat of an odd team, as both Red Hood as well as Maxwell are both Iron Code and do not have elemental advantage. However, it doesn't really matter because as long as you do have Naga here, because she is Electric Code, you are able to counter every one of Crystal Chamber's moves. As for the 3 invulnerability circle rings, you don't need to have a DPS in order to counter the move. And this is also a fairly straightforward fight. Again, for Red Hood here, you want to aim for the base section of the crystals. Sometimes it is a little bit inconsistent, because some of the times you will see that you do 2 instances of damage, and some other times, actually most of the time, it will just deal 1. So because of this, because of the fact that the boss likely only has 1 targetable part, unfortunately for this solo raid, we are going to have to bench Snow White, so no Snow White for this time. And then for the screen wide cancel ring, I decided to bank up Maxwell's shot so that she can fire it when the boss comes back. It's not going to be a lot of damage because again, there's no overlapping parts, and at the most you're going to hit 2. Crystal Chamber enters stage 2, and I believe it's also going to shoot out a bunch of missiles here, and this time around I think it's going to shoot out 2 rounds actually. So because most of the time your team will likely be out of cover shooting, you can kind of just iframe some of them if you order everyone to go into cover when the missiles are coming at you and you know that you can't dodge out of the way or anything. So again, with this run, I was fairly lucky with the orbs, though I made sure to see which character they followed so I know whether or not to go into cover or stay shooting. So there isn't too much to talk about with this run. With Red Hood, I tried to get some of the missiles because she does have piercing permanently. And then for the exploding crystal, you just kind of try to do your best, do as much damage as you can. And I swear I kind of just got lucky there because I just happened to be in full burst and it happened to be Maxwell's turn, so I could just shoot it out of the way. And then by the end here, you can see Tia hanging on by just the sliver of health, but she is doing her best. And with this team, it also gave me a pretty admirable score at the end. So if we skip over, we can see that this team didn't come that far behind the Scarlet team, with a final score of around 800 million. So another pretty good one. So next up, we're going to wind down a little bit because this is definitely the all-ball team that I have with every single solo raid. For all of the solo raids, because you have to make 5 teams as a mandatory requirement, one of them will most likely have a bit of an odd setup, and I think in this case, this is the team to do that. I am running Noise as well as Guillotine here, and Summer Mary is a bit of a flex, but I did want another healer in the team. I'm also running Dala for CDR once again. I think Guillotine is one of the better DPSs in the game. She doesn't get too much attention unfortunately, but if you do invest her just right, then she can still do quite a lot of damage here. So Noise does have an advantage of being a taunter, and because you know that the orb will be targeting Noise, then you can basically dodge the orb easier. Though, to be fair, I think in this case I actually made a mistake. I shouldn't have put Noise in this team, because both Modernia as well as Guillotine are minigun users. You can reliably just hit the orb out of the sky, as both miniguns combined together will definitely make up 500 shots. And I didn't expect too well of a performance out of this team, as I'm forced to burst with Modernia, which is never a good thing in bosses, and Guillotine, while she's still quite good and does function as an electrical DPS, she's not exactly the best, and I don't have the most invested Guillotine out there. So Crystal Chamber enters stage 2, and since I am forced with Modernia, I might as well make the best of it and burst while the missiles are launching. I would say the 2 most common sources of me having to reset are either I couldn't iframe the orb, or that I selected the leftmost attack instead of the one with the orb. Now yes, of course you can just run a debuff cleanser like X Mika or Aid, however, I don't see a point of why you need to do that when you can just keep doing damage, right? And since they're using miniguns and Noise is there as a taunter, she's able to divert a lot of the attention from the missiles. So for the most part, this run went relatively well, though the damage, as you can see on the top, is not so stellar. So at the end, of course, as you can expect, this team did survive the full 3 minutes, though Noise did manage to wipe there at the end, and it did the worst out of the teams, though still not bad for a filler one. Around the mid 300 million mark, which is still not bad. And finally, we're going full on with a minimum magazine-sized team, running Dorothy, Marciana, Summer Anis, as well as regular Pravati. Now, you would think that this team would perform really well. Of course it did. The only issue is that it's quite hard to know when to iframe the orbs, as Summer Anis will only have like 1 shot in the magazine, so she'll constantly be out of cover shooting, and it's really hard to tell when she's out of cover or when she is not when the orb gets launched. So I would say this team definitely took the most amount of retries, as I just wasn't sure which one the orb was aiming for. And I actually got Marciana in my roster for the first time after I rolled the 10 tickets that they gave for the login bonus. And then for these council ring rounds, you can just take it slow. Of course, try not to take it too slow, but you can just do it with 1 shotgun user. So we're just gonna manual Alice here, and honestly, again, just like Red Hood, she does have piercing, though it would only kind of count some of the times when the crystals are out. So once again, I try to aim for like the base location for the crystals, and some of the times you will see 2 rounds of damage go in, but not always. This is probably one of the most solid teams you can have in the game, because Dorothy as well as Pravati just have so much synergy together. Same goes for Marciana, that she's actually one of the other characters that had the last shot fired effect. And then I was kind of holding my breath there as soon as the orb approached me, as I wasn't sure if my run was gonna wipe because of that. So because this team doesn't have cover repair, you're just gonna get whittled down, though Marciana does do a pretty good job of healing everyone, as she is still the only independent type 2 healer right now. And of course I couldn't meet the DPS check there, so Marciana did get wiped out, so this run is going to end prematurely, though to be honest, at this point I was just playing Nikke for like far too long, just to try and get this video out and get a good attempt in, so I knew this was just gonna be the end of the run right here, though honestly, not bad. At the end, this team performed an admirable 700 million damage, which in a second here you will see that my final damage count comes to 3.2 billion, which for the time of recording, since there is still around 3 days left of the solo raid, this puts me in the top 1%, though I do expect this to drop to the mid 2% when the event actually ends. So overall, I think I definitely could have done a bit better, but at this point, I was playing Nikke for like an hour straight trying to get this attempt in, and I was satisfied with what I got in the end. Even if you don't plan on playing competitively, I do recommend still going into challenge mode and just doing a couple runs here and there, as you do get a limited time avatar border, and it does look pretty cool. Anyways, that's gonna be it for this solo raid guide. Let me know how well you performed against this behemoth of a boss that is Crystal Chamber. It's getting late where I am, I really gotta go to bed, so thank you for watching, and as always, have fun with the game.